Well, I think we're live now. We seem to be having a few more problems. I'm going to blame it on the weather. Well, hello everybody out there, hopefully watching. Sorry, we had a few glitches this time, but I am really honored today to have Patrick Valdez, the chancellor of UNM-Taos, and Anita Bringas, one of our regular presenters on these weekly education forums. Anita is the strategic support manager for UNM-Taos, and they're going to be just catching us up on a few things and letting us know how things are going. And they've had, of course, an interesting turn of events, which they've been prepared for. And so I'll let them talk about that. Lillian Valdez, superintendent of schools, is having trouble with our link. So if she is, but I think she has just joined us. And so we'll have everybody here shortly, but I'm going to turn it over to Anita and let her get started for UNM-Taos.
Good afternoon, Stacy. Thank you again for having us and hosting us for this education live forum and giving us all the opportunity to share with the greater community on what is happening at UNM-Taos. Welcome, Dr. Torres. Great to see you. Glad you're able to join us today as well, in spite of the technical challenges that we've all been facing with this today. Stacy, I know we've been really fortunate to have some great guests with us from campus throughout the last several weeks that we've been doing this series. Today, I'm especially honored to have with us our Chancellor of UNM-Taos, Dr. Patrick Valdez, joining us today virtually. And I'll defer over to him. He's got some several updates from campus that he'll be sharing with us today.
Thank you, Anita, and also thank you, Stacy, for hosting the forum the past few weeks with us alongside with Dr. Torres. Nice to see you, Lillian. Hope things are going well, but it's probably a silly statement at this time of year and this year specifically. But I want to say thank you to everybody also who's tuned in or anybody who will get a chance to see this later. This is an opportunity for us to talk a little bit about what we're doing at UNM-Taos. And I do understand that over the last several weeks, we've had several of our staff and our faculty on talk a little bit about the ways in which UNM-Taos is not only serving our students, but also the way we've tried to leverage our resources to serve our community, which is a really big deal for us. It's a really big, important part of our mission. And so today I want to give just a few updates, and then I'm happy to answer any questions, Anita, that you may have, or Stacy, that you may come up with as I'm talking. The first thing I want to say is that we're excited that about 3 weeks ago we were able to launch our fall 2020 semester. As many of you know, and hopefully many of you have people who are enrolled in our classes or in our degree programs or certificates, or even some of our just personal enrichment classes that you can take to learn a little bit more about something that maybe you were curious in. And certainly during this pandemic, if you were feeling somewhat isolated, our hope is that our Zoom courses, our remote courses would give you an opportunity to engage with fellow citizens and people in the community. So we're excited that we launched. We had Census date on Friday, which means our official date where we capture our head count and enrollments. We won't know those numbers until probably maybe tomorrow. By Friday, we usually try to give it a week to vet what those numbers are. And obviously head count's a big deal for us. It's a big deal for our community because we want to make sure that we are serving the needs of our community. And part of that part of that metric is by looking at our head counts. A part of those head counts are going to be the work that we do closely with Dr. Torres and Taos Municipal Schools and the other schools in the area where we offer dual credit courses. A third of those our student population will also include those that are certificate and degree seekers. And then typically rounding out the other third will be those who are taking a course here or there just because, again, they want to stay connected, they want to stay, do some personal enrichment. So all of these populations are important to us. But something that often gets overlooked or doesn't get mentioned enough that I wanted to mention today is the work that we do that's outside of the classroom, the work that we do with our Small Business Development Center to make sure that businesses in the community have the supports that they need to either expand their businesses or to create a business plan to start a new business. This year, what's been particularly important is the services that the SBDC has provided to make sure that a lot of our small businesses and a lot of our businesses in town had access and information to payroll protection plans and small business loans that would help them stay afloat during the pandemic. Lord just announced on their website yesterday that there was some CARES money that was coming in. Our SBDC will be assisting small businesses and businesses to make sure that they have a way to access those monies and apply for them. So please make sure that you reach out to our SBDC to get that help. Also want to mention our Taos Hive initiative, which we're very proud of. That's an initiative that's been in the in progress, I would say now for a little over a year and a half. And we're close to making a big announcement with that here in a couple of weeks during the Taos Hive Day, which is coming up later this month. And the big deal with Taos Hive is that in addition to providing an on-ramp to certificate and degree programs that focus on entrepreneurship and so forth, that the big deal is that we are also providing an access to what we would call a gig or digital economy, so e-commerce, so that people that either relocate to Taos or more importantly that are from Taos but haven't ever had access to this digital economies or these digital opportunities. And so Hive is a way for us to provide those opportunities to students in our community that otherwise wouldn't have had access to that information. And so we're real excited about Hive. It's been selected as a part of a rural innovation initiative. Over 100 communities in the country applied to be part of the RII. Only 10 were selected. Taos Hive and the Taos community area was one of those 10. That's a big deal for us, and we're very proud of that. And so those are just some things. Obviously, we do childcare, which is a learning lab for our early childhood program, but at the same time provides childcare in our community. We had closed down our childcare in March when the pandemic hit, but we were able to reopen softly during the summer months, and then we're back on in the fall. Now, I think that's a good point to segue into what we're doing to make sure that those classes that have to meet face-to-face, and certainly our childcare, what we're doing there to make sure that we're ensuring COVID-safe practices. So the first thing I want to say is that out of all the classrooms or all the classes that we're offering this year, about 6% are actual face-to-face, and those are only the classes that require a lab or a studio or a clinical. And so there was just some things that we cannot do remotely. And so everywhere else that we've been able to convert to remote platforms, we've done. So about 93% fall in that category, but about 6% fall in this other category. We're under strict mandate through the higher education department and through the governor's mandates, just like all universities and colleges in the state of New Mexico, to ensure that we had COVID safe practices and protocols in place in the event that one of our students or faculty or staff would report a positive case. Now, that took a lot of planning and a lot of work, and finally at the end to get approval. We were able to receive all of those approvals. So I want to thank the staff and certainly our community partners who helped us meet that goal. And unfortunately, we have already had 2 students that reported positive. That's the unfortunate part. The fortunate part is that they followed the protocols that we had in place and they self-reported. And once that occurred, it started a chain reaction of our protocols that allowed us to act, or rather respond rapidly, as they say, the rapid response team, respond rapidly to make sure that those students were contacted by a contact tracer. We were able to determine the building that they were in and the classes that they were in, and we were able to close those buildings per our protocols. And we were able to make sure that the students that were at the greatest risk per our Department of Health contacts and our contact tracers, and even our epidemiologists that we have over at the UNM Health Science Center, to make sure that we identify the students that we needed to identify to make sure that they were quarantined, or at least towed to quarantine, and then told to go and test at the Holy Cross Hospital. So thank you to HCH for their help in that. And then those students were not allowed to come back to classes until they receive a negative test result from taking that test. To date, about 6 of those students have already reported back a negative. So that's good news. And those who are awaiting their test results continue to remain quarantined. So we want to make sure that the community knows that we enacted these protocols that we had set in place. We operated them to a T. Very proud of my staff. There's always a sense of panic when you first get this call, but we were able to pull back and say, okay, we've prepared for this, and what do we need to do? And we handled it to the best of our ability, and did all the due diligence that we needed to do that. And we didn't do it alone, so I want to make sure that the community knows that. We did it, with our main campus. We did it with the Department of Health. We did it with the professionals and the experts that we have on staff. And so I'm excited to report that, well, maybe not excited, but I'm glad to report that that we believe we mitigated all the risk at the highest level to ensure that we remain good partners and good neighbors in our community. Let me just shift. I know that that's a lot, but let me just shift over to something that's going to happen in November. We will have an election that's taking place. On that election, in addition to the many political races that are taking place, there will also be a referendum on a GO bond. I can't tell you how to vote. I can tell you to educate yourselves on that GO bond. These are state bonds that do not increase taxes if they pass, nor do they decrease taxes if they don't pass. I can say that Taos has always been a huge supporter of education. Our county has always been one of the highest to pass the GO bonds throughout the state. And I hope that we continue that trend, because we will benefit from that GO bond. There will be monies that we receive to make sure that we can continue infrastructure and capital outlay plans that we have at the Clower campus and our downtown. So we're hoping that we can, again, can't tell you how to vote, but I'm hoping that you educate yourselves on the GO bonds, and will exercise your civic duty and your civic responsibility to engage in the election in November. And then lastly, I'll close on, as much as we are excited that the semester has come to a start, that our enrollments are in. We're getting ready for the fall. For the spring, excuse me. We're getting ready for the spring semester. So here in about a month or so, we'll release a schedule for the spring, and then invite all of you who are interested in pursuing your certificate or your associate's degree to look at the course offerings that we're going to have and the degree programs that we have, so that you can enroll for a spring class. And we certainly would welcome you, and as you've learned over the last 6 weeks, provide a lot of support, even through this pandemic, even through Zoom, to make sure that our students are successful. And with that, I will stand for any questions, or stay on if any other questions come about. So again, thank you so much to the community for all the work that you guys are doing out there to pull together, to pull through, as we say. We certainly appreciate the support that you give UNM-Taos. We cannot do what we do without you. And in large part, we do what we do because of you. So continue to support us, and we'll continue to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Valdez. And I had one question that maybe for either you or Anita. So the census is a big deal, of course, and unless they change things through a court order, the census count will end at the end of September. And of course, Taos County is struggling to get its counts in. And I'm going to ask the same thing, Dr. Torres, of you as well. Can you all point to maybe a specific type of federal grant, or a specific way that federal money that could be linked to the census has helped UNM-Taos? Is there a way to do that? I don't
know if Anita, I would defer to Anita if she's our point person for GO bond, but the truth is that, excuse me, not GO bond, for the census. I think those are just aggregate monies that come to the state. And so whenever the state is doing its budget to determine, budgets for the universities and colleges, obviously the number one is going to be the revenue that the state produces in its many ways. But these federal monies that come to the state do impact us. The level at which I couldn't tell you, but the exact amounts. But it's certainly something that we can look into, so that we can get that answered for you. But off the top of my head, I can't say, hey, that money helps support this program. What I can say is that I won't say this with absolute certainty, but what I can say is that I'm almost certain, that some of those monies help support our child care center, because those are monies that come to CYFD, and those contracts that support our parents. I'm pretty certain, some of that money is going to come from the feds and is disseminated that way. But Anita, I don't know if you know any more about that, but that's where I would stay on that question.
Thanks, Dr. Valdez, and thanks, Stacy, for the question. I don't either have the exact amount that UNM-Taos specifically receives in regards to GeoBond. We've got GeoBond on the brain, census funding, although they're both very important for funding for higher education. But what I will say in regards to the census is that for every individual in Taos County that does not complete the census for their household, equates to somewhere around $3,200 of essentially lost money, or money that we could receive but will not, if those numbers are not counted, those households are not counted. And the funding goes towards things like public education, everything from early childhood K-12 to higher ed, emergency response services, food programs, roads, et cetera, et cetera. So all of the resources that we in a small rural community of Taos County struggle with and certainly need more of as our families grow and our populations grow, it's really critical that we get as much of that allocation as we can by making sure that households are responding to that census. And it could be done by phone, by computer, and by mail, by old-fashioned USPS. So I really do encourage folks to take a look at that, take a moment. I did it online. It took about 10 minutes for me to finish it for my household. It really just asks for address and names of the people living in your household. There's no information asked about social security numbers or any other highly personal information such as that. So fill out those census. Our county is counting on it. So thank you for that question, Stacy.
Thank you, Anita. And it's my pleasure now, again, to introduce Dr. Lillian Torrez, Superintendent of Taos Municipal Schools. And I asked her one time, and she can remind me how many people she basically has to manage. Because when you think about it, it's all the staff and teachers, but it's also all of the kids and their parents over which she is ultimately responsible. And that's always a big job, and it's even bigger now during a pandemic. So Dr. Torres, thanks again for joining us, making time in your busy schedule.
Well, thank you, Stacy and Anita, and of course, Dr. Valdez. It is a pleasure working with all of you. It's amazing the work we're doing here in Taos, and it's a privilege, I know, for all of us. I do have a guest, Lynn Brashar, that I would like to introduce a little bit in a moment. What I thought I would do first, though, is give you a little bit of information regarding the census and what we have. About $7 billion of federal funding that will come to New Mexico for services for children and families. And that includes federal student loans and Pell Grants and special education grants. That's where we get that money. Professional development for teachers, additional support for students. And you may have heard about our food service program called SNAP. Supplementary nutrition for our women and children and infants, and our school breakfasts and lunch, our after school program and childcare and early Head Start, which we have a lot of here in Taos. And of course, the state children's health insurance program, temporary assistance for needy families, Section 8 housing, federal foster care program and adoption assistant programs, and so much more. So everything I've mentioned, we use a lot here in Taos. So that is how important it is to join the census. About 2 days ago, I did send a letter to every parent with a link, and it just takes 7 to 8 minutes, and asking them to please click on the link if they hadn't, and just do a real quick registration. So we're trying everything that we can to get all of our parents and staff. We have almost all of our staff, but we still have some parents that we still need to get in. So I just wanted to mention how important the Census 2020 is. As we move forward, remember that we are not going in face-to-face until October the 14th. And then our plan is to start just 25%. And we only want to start 25% of the students that have selected to go in face-to-face. So altogether, it's about 350 students will be out and about in our district at all of our sites. So it's a very small number. But on the 23rd, which is the next board meeting in a couple of weeks, our recommendation committee will again monitor for the next 2 weeks and recommend to our school board what they think is best for our schools. Are we ready to open 25%, or do we wait another couple of weeks, or maybe even stay out the semester like many districts are doing here in New Mexico? So right now things are changing by the day, so it's hard to say what we're going to be doing, but the plan is to make a decision on the 23rd. And on our website, we will have our link, which is on the top of our board agenda, for anyone that would like to join us for our Zoom board meeting. So I hope that we can get as many people there as possible. So a couple of days ago, we received what's called the COVID-19 Response Toolkit for New Mexico elementary schools. This is an 18-page document that we have been studying that we received on Friday afternoon. And we're aligning it to our reopening plan. So we have a few documents we're trying to align to make sure we're meeting all of the regulations for the public education department and our CDC guidelines, which have changed again. So our documents continue to be fluid, and they might change 2 or 3 more times by the time we actually go to school. But we're trying really hard to keep up with everything and making sure that we keep our students and our staff as safe as possible. So what we plan on doing is looking at our pre-K program. We are ready to look at the opening of a one-on-one testing, an assessment for our pre-K. And to discuss this and also our plan for special education students, we have our Director of Exceptional Programs here, Lynn Brashar, who is an incredible individual, has so much knowledge and is working 24/7 to make sure that our plan is ready to go. Lynn, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Dr. Torres.
Go for it.
So we've been working diligently to try to bring our pre-K kiddos in with the New Mexico pre-K program, which is our 4-year-olds. They have been participating online remotely, but that's not always the easiest way for our students to learn. So we have been preparing protocols and procedures to keep our kiddos safe. And starting Monday, we hope to start bringing them in. We plan to start bringing them in one at a time to perform what we call administer the ECOT, which is our beginning of year assessment to see where they're at. And so teachers will be getting a hold of parents to schedule that with the parents to bring them in each one at a time. And then we plan on the following Monday to go ahead and bring them in about 25% at a time, like the other programs as we move forward. And that will give us time to help kiddos learn how to navigate our new social distancing environment. And then we'll continue to increase those numbers as we go and hopefully get all of our pre-K kiddos in before too long. Then also with special education, those students that have not been able to access successfully via the internet, we're going to start bringing them in a week from Monday. And those case managers have also contacted parents to make those arrangements, start working with them, get them used to this new environment of social distancing and how to learn before we can even bring more of them in. And so it's going to be a changing landscape day to day, but we're going to bring more of our kids in so we can see them. I was with a preschool teacher today who just said, I want my kids back. So we're excited.
Thank you, Lynn. So the one thing we need to always keep in mind is to make sure that we have the correct PPE and all the procedures that teachers must know in order to bring in even one student to the school. So we are being very diligent about that, and we just want to make sure that we're protecting all students. The recommendation is to start with minimum of half of our pre-K students, and we feel we're not ready to do that. We just want to do 25%. And then we will look at bringing in more at a later date. So we are starting very slow and being very cautious and making sure that all students are safe and all of our teachers are safe.
Lynn, Stacy, excuse me, can I just to add on this, because I think that there's some similarities here in regards to reopening, the PED, our elementary and the high schools, and then of course our colleges campus were different because we're dealing with more of adult student population. Well, I think one thing that is important, I think, for the community to know is that one, as educators, we understand how important it is for students to be in a classroom to learn, especially the student populations that we tend to serve. Two is we understand the tremendous risk that is associated with bringing students or any groups of students back together. And three, we all live in this community and we all want to be good neighbors and we all want to keep each other safe. So we're doing everything that we can to balance the mission of our organizations, right, of our institutions, of our schools, and at the same time make sure that we're protecting the integrity of the safety been mandated throughout the state and is required. And one of the questions that I've received, because we sent out a public statement yesterday, we posted it on our website regarding the COVID cases. I mean, we felt one of our responsibilities to the community was to be transparent and open in the areas that we could. Now, we're a small campus and we do need to protect the identity of those students. So we can't give too much information out that would give some of that away, because that's important to us. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the community knows that, hey, this happens, we want to let you know, and we want to let you know how we handled it, because we don't want misinformation out there or rumors, or where people lack information, they kind of fill in the blanks. And right. So one of the questions that I've been asked or was asked was, well, how do you know, like, the students that were, exposed or not exposed, right? So, well, the first thing that we're doing is that when we did our reopening plan, and I was part of an advisory committee throughout a state advisory committee on higher ed to reopen, that went over the best ways to do this. And then that was then shared with ATD and then approved by the higher education department. Well, one of the things that we do is we're very specific with our students that have to be on our campus. First of all, we limit the numbers so that we have social spacing. They do have to wear their masks and PPE, and we have sanitizer and all the things that we're required to do. But we also make sure that they know that, hey, you enter the building here and you exit the building here. You stay in this classroom. There are no community spaces where they can gather and learn. We say you get on, you teach, into your classroom, you leave afterwards, and so we keep them in spaces so that in the event like what we already had, where somebody reports, when the contact tracer contacts a student that reports positive, they can say, okay, we know you were in this classroom around these 10, 12, however many students, and that's it. Beyond that, outside of that classroom, that really not something that we can control. But in terms of making sure that our campuses are as safe as possible, that's what we're doing. And again, I would imagine that Taos Municipal Schools and the other schools in the areas carry that same weight, that same stressor, but also are going to follow those procedures to a T. So I think that's important to share with the community, because I think that's one of those things where, like, well, kids are just on campus and they're walking around everywhere. No, they're not. They get to a classroom, they get their temperature taken. We monitor that. They sit down in social spaced areas. After that class is over, they exit the building. And that's how we've been managing the trains in all of our classrooms and in all of our buildings.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right, Dr. Valdez. We have students in pods, so they cannot leave their pods, and they also will have lunch within their own classroom. But yes, they will be temperature checked as soon as they're driven onto campus. There'll be a temperature check, and then there's another one when they go to the building, and then they can only go to the classroom, and then they have to wear a face mask, and then they'll be provided face shields, and the teacher will have the same thing plus gloves, and in some cases we may need surgical gowns and scrubs. So we have this wide variety depending on what role they play in the schools. But when they do their, we have a kiosk where we do automatic temperature checks. When you put your face on the kiosk, we do that even at central office. And everything is logged in. And so there are procedures for every step you take, and even to go to the bathroom. And these are guidelines that we will abide by. And we will be going through a mandated training. Right now we have public education department has mandated training where you have to pass a test. And that is the general coronavirus training. But then we're going to do on the 23rd, the same day as our board meeting, from 1 to 3, we're going to have all of our staff members go through a very intensive training on the Taos process.
Thank you, Dr. Torres. This question, it kind of builds off of what Dr. Valdez was speaking about. And so I don't know if this question is for Lynn or you, Dr. Torres, or both. So speaking about the preschool kindergarten population, that's a very exuberant population, right? It's hard to contain that passion and joy. And I don't know if you all have probably seen a very funny Facebook sort of posting that's gone around that gives like 25 things that children will say to teachers about their mask, right? And it's very funny, but I suspect it's true. And how are there some best practices that you all have been looking at and perhaps developing on? How do you help teach little ones how to do all of these things, social distance and all that, and not hurt their feelings, not stamp all over their passion and their exuberance? I'm amazed that you all are attempting to do this at all. How do you all help staff and the kids?
We've got some very, very imaginative teachers that have worked very hard and been very thoughtful about this process. We have guidance through social stories where we read them with the students online right now, since they're all remote, and with parents. And one of the teachers was saying, we meet with them twice a day for about 30 minutes. And so the second half of the day, they all wear masks and they use puppets and they do all kinds of cool things. So they're getting used to the masks. That is one of the reasons why we're looking at having a smaller number, so they can get used to that routine. Once they've gone through their temperature check, they get to the classroom. How are they going to put their backpacks and coats up with that social distancing? Then they're going to wash their hands just as soon as they get in there. And we've worked on each of them having centers where they see each other, but showing them how this social distancing is. How can we share? We can share ideas, we can share thoughts, we can share conversations. There's so many things we can still share, even though we can't share one toy to another. And there's going to be a neat, one of the teachers has a little store. So what she's going to do is, we have each of our centers and they get to go to the store to get what they need for their center. So now we've got the toys or other objects that they're going to, be using in an isolated area. And then we have a way for them to put them somewhere else so that they are clean before they get to use them again. The same with dress up. Instead of having all of in the imaginative play, all of the dresses and outfits out, just one or two. And then, okay, here is where you put this away, which maybe it's going to help kiddos putting their dirty clothes in the hamper at home. You never know. And also, we don't want to eliminate all choices. So it may be in the reading area, there's 2 or 3 or 4 books instead of a whole array. and they get to choose one or two of those, and then we'll keep rotating through. So it's going to keep things new and fresh and exciting. We're putting procedures in place for the playground so that they understand how to social distance but still have fun. So it's going to be a challenge, and we are, like I said, starting very small, because we know especially our pre-K kiddos have never been in school before unless they've gone to one of our other, community preschools or daycares. So this is a learning process for them. So just having a couple of them at a time and help show them these processes and how it can still be fun.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I would add to that end too, Stacy, that, for the community, right, that, I've just been so pleased with the way that the Taos County, Taos community has come together in so many ways during this pandemic to support each other and to help one another, even to the extent of putting together a community organizations and active disaster group, the COAD, which UNM-Taos is proud to be a part of. But, we just have to remember, my plea is to remember to be patient with each other, to remember to be kind with each other. I mean, this really is a year of experimentation. I mean, if there's no playbook on this, and if there had been one, we probably would have thrown it out months ago, just because things have been changing so fast and very fluid. And even the best planning we have to be prepared for could be disrupted. So the minute we had students self-report a positive, we have to shut down that building and cancel all those classes in that building for at least 24 hours. And when we went into 48 hours before our custodial crews could get in there and disinfect that building. So that's disruptive, right? For even those courses that are face-to-face, that's probably going to happen at the K through 12 level at some point. If we think it's not going to happen, then then we're fooling ourselves, right? We hope it doesn't happen, but we prepare ourselves in the event that it does. And when that happens, it's going to disrupt not only that classroom and those students, but it's going to disrupt the parents who are dropping those kids off, who now they're going to be back at home again. So everybody is under a tremendous amount of stress. And we're aware that our students are having to overcome lots of barriers and challenges. We're aware that some of our students are parents who are trying to take classes with us and at the same time making sure that their kids are also attending school. So I think that the best thing that we can do to continue to do is to remember to be kind to each other, patient with one another, and that even the best laid plans, will probably be disrupted this year, unlike any other year. So, I mean, that would be my plea to the community to keep doing what we've been doing. And I've been very, very pleased and very proud to be a part of this community during this time.
Thank you, Dr. Valdez. Dr. Torres, anything else you wanted to say, or?
I just wanted to ditto what Dr. Valdez is saying, because we continue to put our plan together and it continues to change, and it will continue to change before October 14th. In the end, we may not come in until January. We'll see how that goes. Our special education children we are required to provide the best education possible, and there are a certain population that face-to-face is what's required on an IEP. So we are just getting started. It's taken time to make sure that we are ready to go. And so in the next week, we're hoping to try out, and we have very many anxious parents waiting, and we're doing our best to get it going. And we're going to make sure that we go with the 18-page document that we just received from PED on everything that will be required. So we continue to be cautious and start slow. We do know that many other schools have already begun up to 3 weeks ago. And we just don't feel that it's time yet, other than we're starting with these small groups. And so we will move forward, and we can never guarantee anything. All we can do is everything we can to keep the lowest risk possible. But we will do everything possible. And we're doing even more than what's required. Like for instance, having teachers wear scrubs in certain instances with certain students. So just that added extra is something that we really are trying to think of everything possible. So hopefully with the population that we're about to start with, we do know that, regulations state that we at some point need to begin with this. And so we are going to start very slow.
All right. Thank you all so very much for joining us for our weekly education forum. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and it warms up. We're not ready for winter yet.
Agreed.
We need a fall.
Stacy, if I may, I wanted to just point folks' attention to the Facebook chat box, the comment section rather, where I posted several links, information on several of the things that we mentioned, the bonds, the census, etc. I do also have listed in that is the link to the COVID resource page on our website. So folks are welcome to go there. We have posted the memo, the public memo that we put out in response to these 2 positive students self-reporting, as well as our campus reopening plan. So those are available to the public that folks are encouraged and welcome to take a look at. And any questions that the community might have, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach us at taos@unm.edu, and I'll put that in the comment box as well. Again, the email address is taos@unm.edu. And then lastly, we have our second 8-week term starting October 14th. I'm sorry, October 12th. I always get that confused. So any students that are interested in taking a short term, 8 weeks, registration is still open. So visit taos.unm.edu or call 737-6215. Thanks so much, Stacy, Dr. Torres, Lynn, and Dr. Valdez for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to be on with you, Stacy. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much, Dr. Valdez, Daisy. Thank you, Lynn.